All our tough Irishman has a fast and successful recovery, and I know he'll be getting ready to rock. So with all that said, I'll open up to questions regarding the game and see if we want to get started.
And David Moore, Dallas Morning News. How did you find out, and I know you all have a plan in place when Mike's not able to be here, but just how you found out and just kind of the sequencing of it?
Yeah, I think first off, finding out, or the second part of your question first, I think you always have to have a contingency plan, and Mike's great about that. He does. I think we all learned a lot a few years back in COVID when, coach is down, a player's down, and how does that go? And so he's done a fantastic job of mapping, not just him or me or anybody else who could have been in that same spot to say, hey, this is the next step and this is how we go. So we're super organized and ready for that. On the first one, I saw him earlier this morning. He just didn't look good, and he said, man, I'm hurting. And so he went down to see the doc, and that's when it turned out to be more than, stomach bug. And so thankfully get it worked on quickly and get him back and rocking here soon.
And I know you mentioned a couple of years ago in New Orleans when you took over, a little different component this time since he's the play caller. How does that impact what you do in practice?
Do you think that tough Irishman's going to miss this game? That's a big hypothetical. We'll let all that come to then. We're certainly anticipating Mike being back for the game. We'll handle it and hold it down for practices, and knowing him, he'll be online tonight wanting to, go through the red zone and third down and everything else. So, yeah, we certainly expect him to be rocking, by game day again.
Clarence Hill, Four-Star Telegram. I'm assuming you guys had a team meeting this morning. Can you talk about the mood of the team when they found out and where they are mentally?
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to visit with them until at our walkthrough, so we visited with those guys and just say it's, something that, glad they caught it early and go get the procedure done and then let Mike rest recover. So, they knew something was there when he wasn't at our team meeting this morning, and so that's when we notified the guys.
Dan Tuddox for the ESPN. Do you keep everything the same? Is the schedule the same of how you guys?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, like what's good about Mike and the system here, it's all laid out, to about how we'd go and what we would do from yesterday, today, all the way through through the game, the meetings, the schedule. So pretty easy on that one. You just take it and run with it. And between myself and Brian and Bones, we got it covered and we're ready to go do that. We expect great practice, just like it's been set up to do. So we're ready to go do that.
Hey, Dane?
Jane Slater, NFL Network. When you said he wasn't looking good, what was his initial symptoms when he walked into the building?
Stomach pain, just I don't feel good, So more just when something's wrong, you don't feel right, and so he's an early riser. So when you see him there, we kind of pulled up at the same time, walked in together, and so he was going right over to see Jim, and thankfully did right there. Tough as he is, usually just I'll fight through it, and then next thing you know, you're like, oh, this is not good. So I'm glad he went, got squared away, and good news for him. He's a fast healer, so he's been through them before. So we certainly expect him back quickly and get his procedure done today.
You said he's been through it before?
No, not appendix. You only have one of those. Yeah, he is a very unique individual. But more importantly, he's tough. He's battled with his back and all the stuff. But like I said earlier, Mike's done a great job of contingency planning. It could have been any one of us in that same spot today, and we would have reacted in the same space.
Calvin Watkins, Dallas Morning News. You guys obviously have long hours and that kind of thing. You just talk about the health of you guys as coaches and how important it is for you guys. Yeah,
it is super important, and it's something that's just kind of part of our profession that you really have to try as best we can to manage it as often as we can. And the weeks like we had the previous couple make it tougher, but by and large, we got a good routine. We know how it works, and it's not just for coaches, for players too. Everybody, it's not a sprint. And we know that, so staying really consistent in our processes help us as coaches and as players, just because it goes a long way.
Babe Lothmer, Cowboys Radio. Dan, talking about the game coming up.
There we go.
Yeah. So 5 weeks, teams change a little bit without giving away, obviously, any schematic adjustments. What do you see different that they're doing today than what they did 5 weeks ago against?
Yeah, that's a good question, because you really have to dig in when you're playing, division opponent as well. They'll have some looks that are different from the first game. We'll have some looks different from their game. And then we'll just have to see from a personnel standpoint. Sounds like their tight end may, be back, who had been injured over the last few games, which, like on any team, that would change, some runs or passes and how that would factor in. So, but past that, how do they play against us? They're an equipped team. They've got good skill at a lot of spots. So you're really trying to find, what things were we vulnerable to, or what could we do differently, and you try to dig into those first, and then you also look into, hey, what has changed since then, concept or a play that they've had good success with. Generally, those are ones that would get repeated.
Nick.
Nick Harris, DallasCowboys.com. Mike's health aside, do you feel there's any added intensity with the guys in the meeting rooms so far this week going into this game, or are they still treating this like another game?
I would say you'll get the answer of they're going to treat it like another game. So I'll leave it at that. Players and coaches. That's what makes division games fun. There's just heated moments and fun matchups. This is going to be a hell of a game, and we know we got tough matchups all across, and we'll be absolutely ready to take it on.
Todd.
With how they run their offense and what they like to do, maybe it's dependent on Hurts' health, but do they put Mike in a bind more than other teams with their RPO game and things like that? Do they keep him off balance more than other teams?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's more than others. I'd say maybe they're run and play pass more than others, so that could be, one of the factors. But that's our job to find the matchups and where to go and where to attack. But I wouldn't say more than another team. Maybe just their play style of how they play might be some things different. They don't play in the traditional way on some of the third downs that other teams do, and so that's more unique to their system, not to Micah. I think, they would play the same way if they were playing, San Francisco last week or Buffalo or, any of the games they had leading up to that.
Ed.
Dan Edwarder, ESPN. As to the contingency plans with Mike, if he's not able to get back despite your expectations, what's your confidence level in Brian Schottenheimer being able to call the plays, given his experience in that regard?
Yeah, like I think, Ed, that's hypothetical. I really don't anticipate that happening, so not much to hit on there. I see this tough guy making it back, and that's something we can discuss later on in the week if it doesn't go that way. But we're fully anticipating Mike being ready to roll.
Clarence.
Fordham did one of the best jobs against the Eagles offense that we've seen in a couple of years. What did they do that was successful that you guys can replicate?
Yeah, it's a good question. Somebody hit me up with that earlier, and I think each game's a little bit different. When you get ahead like they did, that certainly changed things because they weren't in their normal rhythm, of where they get the runs and the play passes. When you get behind, you got to take some shots and throw it downfield to get going in that space. So I thought that, as much as anything, just the first quarter got it just like the game totally switched, as you went into into the second half. And so that, I think, the score differential probably affected the game as much as anything.
Is Jalen running as much? Do you see, because of the need, that he's not doing some of the things he did last year? As far
It's interesting. The carries are still awfully high. Now, I know about 30 or 35 of them are on sneaks, but not all 112, or how many there are. And there's, quarterback draws. That's, certainly an effective one for them. There's some regular zone read plays. So he's always been an effective scrambler. And extending plays, I think that defensively is one of the real topics that it's hard to simulate. And we're fortunate to have hopefully a guy like Trey today simulate some of those plays where you get off schedule and you have to almost play two plays. Here's the first play that might be a drop back or a play pass, and then here's the second play, where the quarterback gets outside the pocket. Those are actually the hardest ones to simulate because, you guys have been to practice. There's cards that run this route, do this one. Well, in another 20% of their plays, the quarterback's going to get outside the pocket to try to buy time and create, and that's when a lot of their explosive plays have come as well. So it's another added element and weapon of a mobile quarterback that you add not just the legs to run the ball, but legs to extend plays, and he's certainly exceptional at that.
But just the number of call runs, outside of the tush push, outside of the scramble, do you see the same amount as in the past, or?
It feels the same, but I don't know that off the top of my head because I know I got another 20-some quarterback draws. I got another 20-some, off of a quarterback counter, run check, or a zone read. So there's quite a few. I don't know if it'd be the same amount or volume. That's a good question. We have to defend them either way, whether they're higher or lower. You don't know, hey, this is the game. They have more of them. But I don't know. I just know if you're over 100, usually you're up there in numbers.
Todd.
Is the best or only way to defend the tush push to avoid 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1?
I wouldn't say it's the only way, but it is 1,000% the best way. And there's very few of those, in the 3rd and 5 category. So it's definitely something that you have to look at and you have to be ready to defend. They're excellent at it, and we'll have to have a good plan for that, and we do.
Garrett Podell, CBS Sports. Dan, you guys did a pretty great job on A.J. Brown and the Eagles receivers in the last matchup, but after the Seattle game, how much, if anything, do you lean on sort of the changes you made after halftime coverage-wise in the Seattle game, or how much does your coverage plan change after seeing what happened?
Yeah, that's a good question, and not a lot. Obviously, we made some changes, we matched, we did other things, but we're still pretty aggressive. That's who we are, and that's how we get it on, and we've done that a lot and have a lot of confidence in doing that. Now, as it relates to this week, one of the things that Philadelphia does well amongst many is third down. And I think going into our game the first time, they were hitting at about 50% on third down, which is a really high number. And ironically, that's the number they hit. And so, to me, that's where some of the secret sauce in this game is going to live, because some of their third downs can turn into fourth downs where they go. And so that's why I was referring to earlier, they don't play in a traditional sense all the time on third downs. And so that adds another element to it. But I think that's one of the games within the game to say, on our third and fourth downs, that's a really big deal. And we've got to go make those stops in that space.
Bree.
Bree Marinthus, SI, D-Law as your Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. How would you describe him?
I think we're just so proud of him, number one, because what an impact you can have, not just on his own family, but on a community here, back in South Carolina, in Idaho, and all the spaces in between that he gets to touch. It's one of the coolest moments for our league, and certainly to be one of the nominees. There can't be many higher honors, because it's representing who you are, not only as a ball player, but as a man. And I think we're all really pumped for him to be one of the nominees this year. It's a great honor, and one that's so deserving. This is a guy who's got a huge heart. He cares. He wears it, and he's one of the very best teammates we have. And now the community is understanding at large. He's one of the best teammates for them as well.
Michael Gilpin, Dallas Morning News. A lot to talk about what this Cowboys offense does after the 2.3, as well as what the Eagles do after the 2.3. From your vantage point, focusing on the receiver core, what does a good group do after that initial rhythm of the play breaks down? Yeah, it's really like a second play that happens, Michael, and the best of the best have some combinations. They work back towards the quarterback. One goes vertical, one works on the sideline. So when the quarterback does get out to a side, there's certain spots that a receiver will go to. If it's especially like in man-to-man, you're continuing to run to try to beat that leverage to go. And oftentimes you can see a quarterback really throw a good sideline ball to a guy who's got the leverage to go win on those. So there's a lot that goes into it. You have to practice it a lot and have scheduled plays where somebody gets out. I would say the best of the best are equipped to do it a lot, and so the teams that do get outside a lot are usually the best, because they have to match that quarterback. Because you don't go into the play thinking there's going to be a scramble. You go into the play, you're full speed on your route. Now, once you break and you turn, now not all hell breaks loose, but there's a coordinated effort of how to go, and we have to do the same thing defensively, and we call that plaster. Because you could even be in a zone, Michael, where after that play, it turns into man-to-man. So now I got to attach onto someone. I've got to grab this person and go, even though on the start of the down I was playing zone. So there goes, some balance to it.
David.
When you face a team a second time in a season, does it alter your preparation from the standpoint of, well, this is what they did against us defensively in the first three quarters, and we have to be sure to take that away? And how much of that came out of that game, and how much of it do you feel was just situational? They were just in third and manageable too often.
Yeah, I think both things. When you're playing the division team, you don't do exactly the same, even when it goes really well, because you don't want to say, okay, we're just going to rinse and repeat. Here's the game plan. Do it again. You always in the division games want to have a new look, a new wrinkle that looks like one thing and it plays as another. That's both offensively and defensively. But as it goes through it. We just got to be ready for, changing, how we play on certain looks. And those are the things that we'll work hard at today and tomorrow getting into it. We'll get some great looks from the guys, speed people, where do they feature players? When somebody's at a certain spot, what does that mean? And they do the same thing to us. So I think that's when you hear Mike talk about self-scout and going back to look, what does it mean when Parsons over the center? What does it mean when Jordan Lewis is in a certain spot or Hooker's in a different location? Is that normal, or is there something that's special that goes with that? So you really want to be mindful of what that looks like.
Jacob Denimore with the ticket. Over the last few weeks, the 3 games where you've struggled to keep the other team out of the end zone were San Francisco, the first matchup with Philly, and then Seattle. Was there any kind of common denominator in those 3 games that you could point to as to why you struggled as opposed to the other matchups over that stretch?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, it's a great question. One, I would say really the red zone and the low red zone specifically is an area that we're really trying to attack to say, not just for this game, but, over these next, block of games that we're really trying to nail down. And that's one of the ones we really want to like hang our hat on to say in that low red zone, how do we go get these stops to go convert those to field goals? We've done a good job of not allowing big explosive plays, so if they're down at the gate, you've got to find ways to get that shut, and that's honestly what we were just hitting on today before we came in about going back in the red zone and finding the answers to that. So that's really the emphasis for us.
Jay.
Going back to what you're saying, how the Eagles don't play a traditional third down, can you give an example of that without giving me?
Sure. Yeah, no sweat at all. Yeah. So oftentimes you'll see a team that's 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 6, and it's 100% pass. And that's reason of, a lot of things. That's why you see a lot of exotic defenses from, blitzes and where to go. On their team, that's not generally the case, where they have some run and RPO actions into those, knowing that if it gets sometimes to 4th down and 1 or 4th and 2, especially to 4th and 1, they've been so successful at that play, some of the 3rd downs may in fact play like a 2nd down, knowing that 4th and 1 is, in their mind and their production, one of their most successful things that they do. So that's, to me, where it's a little bit different. And you've seen a lot of people try to do a similar way, but they're the very best at it in terms of the quarterback sneak.
Why do you think they're the best at it?
One, I think they've got the personnel for that really, they got a strong runner at quarterback, big offensive line, and they're pretty equipped for it. So you've seen a lot of people try different things to go away from that, but at the end of it, you're defending, 6 inches to a yard, and you've got to go try to find some ways to get stops. But that, to me, the 3s, 4s, 5s, on some teams, you can pin your ears back and go because it's going to be all pass. On this team, that's not the case. So some of their 3rd downs aren't all passing, and that's a big difference on traditional passing downs.
To circle back to where we kind of started, how much do you feel, COVID experience, including when you were here in 21, but just how much that calloused the league or this, this building to kind of cope and handle and respond to Mike's absence?
Yeah, well, one, it sucked. Let's just get that out, out there if we all felt that way. I think what it forced us to do is, big picture, we learned how to communicate differently. Different people may have to lead in different spaces that they don't normally do. And so I thought there's a byproduct that came from that, of different people taking on different leadership moments, or players, coaches, administration, however that looked. It's kind of an all-hands-on-deck approach, and I think what better concept of all hands on deck than a football team? To say we all have each other's back. There's 100 people here who have Mike's back, and so all we want is for him to, get better as fast as he can to come back in and direct it. But until then, we'll handle it for him. Brian and I and Bones, like I said, Brian will visit with you guys tomorrow. We'll take care of that. But it calloused everybody, but there's also lessons there that we're all forced to learn, your guys in your world included, where different things came up and you had to adjust and carry extra and say, hey, let's go get it on and have each other's back. And I think there's no better example of that than a big football team, where we're all looking out for one another and making sure whatever it takes to play at our best, we're all willing to do that.
All righty, thank you, Dave.
All right, see you guys. Thank you.